Oh, 2025 is starting off in a rough state for gamers. The Arc Raiders playtest has come and gone, GTA 6 has been delayed another year, and the day before devs are now suing news sites for calling them a scam. But chin up everyone, at least we've got Doom. I've now logged about 25 hours, maybe a little more, with Doom: The Dark Ages, the follow-up prequel to 2020's hit Doom Eternal. At this point, I've rolled credits, I've fully upgraded all but a few small items of gear, I've reached mastery on about half of my weapons, and after all that, I can now honestly say that Doom: The Dark Ages is a vastly different Doom than we have ever seen. You see, in Doom 2016, it was all about the run-and-gun fantasy. In Doom Eternal, platforming and verticality was the focus, but at their core, both of those shared a common player power fantasy of speed and movement. Then along comes Doom: The Dark Ages, which took a look at all of that and said, "Hold my beer." Drawing heavily on OG Doom with its strafe-to-aim design ethos, stressing close-quarters combat and abilities, but now armed with the almighty shield. Now, for some, they're going to take a look at this new grounded Doom combat formula, and they're going to say, this ain't for me. And, that's understandable considering how giant a formulaic leap this new Doom has attempted to pull off. I, however, loved almost every second I got to spend with the Dark Ages outside of a few items that we'll talk about a little later in this video. If you're new here, consider supporting the channel by hitting subscribe and ringing the bell to receive my future upload alerts. And now, sit back and enjoy all the glory that is Doom: The Dark Ages. Normally, I would try to kick off a review like this with a performance breakdown, which we will get into in just a moment, but since this is Doom, we're going to switch up the formula, and we have to begin with combat, right? Because ripping and tearing is what this game is all about. Now, for a bit of context here, and you'll see this throughout the clips in today's review, this is not the high-speed, extreme verticality Doom we saw in the last two iterations of 2016 and Eternal. This monumental shift and actual return to OG Doom was confirmed 3 months ago when, during a developer direct from id Software, Marty Stratton, executive producer on the game, and Hugo Martin, the game director, were throwing around terms like strafe to aim, this version of the Slayer becoming an iron tank, bullet hell design, and finally they finished up with a confirmation that we were moving from run and gun over to stand and fight. So how does this translate to the Dark Ages? Well, the basis of combat here is built on extreme close quarters combat, all while dealing with either slow-moving incoming orange enemy attacks while attempting to parry back faster-moving green attacks. This creates a combat maze as you weave around and in between the slower orange attacks, which by the way is the bullet hell style of game that they mentioned, all while watching for the more important green incoming attacks because those can be parried back at targets, creating devastating effects and also charging up your abilities. In many regards, the Dark Ages is, again, a return to form, borrowing and innovating heavily on OG Doom, foregoing the acrobatics of Doom Eternal in favor of a grounded attack system built on power. Now, whereas in 2016 and Eternal, it's about firing and swapping weapons along with ammo economy, the Dark Ages places far more emphasis on weaving through projectiles to get in close, with your end goal being to use your shield to either block and parry all manner of attacks to charge up your gradually improved parry counters and, of course, your bone-crushing melee finishers. I did want to mention there is so much throughput built into the Slayer's new weapon, the Shield Saw, and it has really nailed the concept of a multi-tool item, including blocking, throwing, crowd control lockdowns, parry, and deflection, which is absolutely vital to the entire design philosophy of the Dark Ages. I did want to expand just a bit more on this combat puzzle system, and within Doom the Dark Ages, it's built on the concept of building strength through support, as your weapons are, yes, formidable, but they serve a greater purpose of creating space and charging up your melee systems, all as you were constantly moving forwards towards the biggest and baddest and strongest of enemies, with the end goal of using your shield combos and upgrades for maximum effectiveness, while waiting for that perfect moment to unleash the fires of hell with your earth and bone-shaking melee finishers. Now, where the Dark Ages takes combat to an entirely new level within the Doom architecture is just how much freedom this new shield parry melee finisher system provides us. You see, in Eternal, we were constantly getting locked into repetitive glory kill systems, which, although glorious to watch, could lose their flair after a certain number of repetitions. Now, Dark Ages has taken that formula and just flipped it entirely on its head, now giving us an unsynced glory kill mechanic, granting us, the players, the freedom to attack from different angles where we can actually trigger different kill animations, which is sick. You can move between the animations and melee finishers, maybe throwing in a gun strike in between and dividing out your attacks with one melee strike to this enemy, then turning your attention to another, finishing off your combo by giving them a Spartan kick straight to their chops. This newfound freedom not only creates a sense of immersion within the Doom combat systems, but it also empowers us with a ton of player agency. We now have the freedom to attack from different angles and handle different battlefield scenarios, having all of these new tools at our disposal. However, with such a dramatic shift from the speed and verticality of the last two Doom titles, there might be concerns out there with just how well this particular Slayer is able to handle traversal across wide open areas and how best he can deal with enemies on higher ground. And here's where the shield, once again, enters the equation. Now, in your arsenal are three options to assist with both of these issues, including the shield saw toss, which can be used to reach out to distant targets and enemies with tactical advantages, often instantly killing lower level targets, just sawing them into half. There's also a new mechanic where you can lodge the shield into much larger targets, keeping them effectively on an AoE lockdown as the shield just sits there and repetitively chews them up. And of course, they're not firing their weapons as you move into kill range. And finally, if you need to cover very large distances, which by the way is often in the Dark Ages, you can lock onto targets at range and perform a shield bash, where you fly across large distances to eventually impact a target or group of enemies. There's also a new enemy armor mechanic you will need to quickly learn and master that requires a two-system combo to break through, contributing to the complexity of the overall combat puzzle. Now, as you work your way up through the campaign, you'll start to encounter hardened versions of early enemy types, this time wearing armor. And the way you break through that armor is worth mentioning, because it uses a mechanic of first firing your weapons to superheat the armor plates, which will then turn bright yellow, at which point you can sling your shield at the target, igniting the armor and completely breaking it to pieces. This method is also highly effective versus these massive hordes of shield bros, which, by the way, are all over the game. But in this case, once you superheat their shields with your weapons and you sling your shield at their shields, they will break apart, killing anything in the area, again like a medium AoE attack, completely disintegrating their shield formations while also killing or damaging surrounding targets. kind of an odd mixture for sure, but I wanted to include weapons and innovation together in a topic by themselves, and then it only felt right to then throw in performance as well. So let's kick it off with that promised performance run through. And I did all my playing and recording on PC with a 4090 GPU, and side note here, using a controller, along with a yet unpublished set of NVIDIA drivers. Now, to say this game ran damn near flawlessly would actually be an understatement. And now over 20 hours, I've had one crash where I think my recording software was simply overwhelmed with all the demons being slain on screen, and it just said, F it, I'm out of here. I mean, I ran the entire playthrough in ultra 4K settings, tending to keep the DLSS set to performance and frame gen turned off because somewhere in there it was wrecking havoc with my recording software. Now, through the entire campaign and all my recordings, I made sure to keep my FPS counter visible in the top right hand of the screen. And even without all the frames tech activated, again, because it was messing with my recording software, I'm still holding 75 FPS when literally all hell is breaking loose on screen with tons of particle effects. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that once the game launches with everything to do with ray tracing fully enabled, the drivers are settled, and I turn off my recording software, I'm thinking this game is so damn well optimized the way it just sits right now, it should pull close to 120 FPS. So yeah, massive props to the team over at id. Not only did the game hold up with just that one crash, but it shipped to me for review in a just crazy strong state. Over now to innovation, and some of this I'm going to walk you through right now, and some you can just see as you watch the video footage. But the first of these things we need to discuss is this new difficulty modifier system, much like we saw Starfield eventually go to, with a ton of customization options here. Now, it starts off with 6 levels of base difficulty, from Aspiring Slayer all the way up to Ultra Nightmare. But now in Dark Ages, there are the extra sliders, allowing players to tailor the game to their personal preference, which I really wish more games would start moving over to this customization system. You've got things like parry windows, damage to player, damage to demons, game speed, enemy aggression levels, and more. I mean, it's all here allowing you to tailor specific challenges or to just pump everything up so you can kill everything in one shot, but the same applies to all enemies' incoming damage against you. Through the video footage, you're going to be able to see that the Dark Ages has also added in semi-destructible environments, and while certain structures are of course hard-baked into the levels, you'll find that many smaller and secondary structures, like for instance boxes, crates, and vendor stands, are all completely destructible. They chunk and fall apart, and those are just to name a few. There's a lot more in the game. In fact, when you're playing the campaign and going for 100% clears, destroying those smaller pieces can sometimes reveal gold, which counts towards your completion levels. Weaponry and gear are also very unique and have been completely reworked, with really only the shotgun and super shotgun making a return, albeit heavily modified. Now, the shield has a complete unlock system that then turns to runes, which is a way of customizing the outgoing parry damage to your needs. I mean, there's things like a chain lightning tree and even a shoulder-mounted auto turret that just starts dumping out rounds when you do hit those perfect parry windows. Also, as a Slayer, you get access to 3 melee options, including a power gauntlet, flail, and even that nasty heavy mace, all with unlocks and their own kill animations. The weaponry has already been made public and heavily covered prior to today's review, but at your disposal you've got multiple weapons that can also be customized, like take for instance the shotgun, where I get to choose between a certain tier of perk that catches targets on fire, but then I get the option of choosing between more armor pickups from burning enemies or enemies that once on fire can explode on death. In terms of the actual weaponry, well, you've got weapons that crush down skulls and spit them out in different patterns, plasma weapons, heavy weaponry like a grenade launcher, a chain shot weapon that fires out a massive ball attached to a chain, smaller auto weaponry, and even the BFC, which, if you know anything about Doom, it does exactly what you remember it doing, just now firing out a crossbow with devastating effects. And finally, not discussed very much when it comes to Doom because of the speed of the game and all the slaying we do on screen, but can we just get an amen for the visuals in the Dark Ages? I mean, The id Tech 8 engine is pumping out some hardcore visuals, making use of things like ray tracing and global illumination, along with an upcoming implementation of path tracing. Now, for those of you that were into the Indiana Jones game and just how strong those visuals were there, well, that's because id sent over a healthy dose of their id Tech engine, along with all the techno wizardry baked in there. And of course, here in Doom, it does look and perform incredible, especially when you've got this many enemies in one area at a time. It's not uncommon to enter an arena-type area to see 50-plus enemies all lined up and waiting for you, which I think is a departure from previous Doom titles. Also, if you're looking for a molecular level walkthrough on the game engine and all the horsepower under the hood for this thing, I'll link in several videos posted by Digital Foundry, who did an awesome job of breaking all this tech down. While we're here, I need to mention the metal shredding music, which is the heartbeat of the Doom combat sequences, and I wasn't sure how Doom would fare moving on past Mick Gordon, but that was answered quickly and my fears laid to rest once I got to playing and slaying. This time around, the music is composed by Finishing Move Inc., and although it has a characteristically different sound to it than Gordon's, it still gets your pulse lit on fire and your heartbeat jacked up to full throttle. The Dark Ages pushes outside the previous limits of the franchise not only with its combat style, but with some of the items I'm about to mention here. And because the rest of the game is just done so damn well, these kind of stuck out to me. Starting off with cutscenes. Breaking from 2016, which basically had none of them, we then saw a movement to a bit more use of cutscenes in Internal, and now in the Dark Ages, cutscenes bookend every mission. Now, I'm not going to show you any of the footage here because this is a spoiler-free review, but there's enough of these in the game that some people might find it off-putting. I'm not saying they're bad, just that for somebody that is used to dooming 2016 style, it might be slightly jarring. This is also the first Doom game with some more massive open-world style maps, and these are the biggest maps I've ever seen in Doom, which is nothing bad for certain. I mean, they're great to see, but there's also thrown in here 2 new styles of mission and map structure, including a pretty dope Pacific Rim style mech combat set of several missions. But then we get to the dragon, and here's where I think a good concept, at least on paper, went just entirely off the rails. Combat with the dragon is built around a wonky set of controls where you fly up to an enemy ship and then you use a lock-on mechanic to try to engage the ship's defenses that see you dodging up, down, left, or right around incoming laser blast in a quick time manner, if that makes sense. And yeah, it just didn't work for me. Outside of these brief combat sequences you get to engage in, the dragon feels like it's a way to draw out mission times, and I really feel, as great as the rest of the game truly is, there could have been something more coming out of this dragon concept. And finally, The Dark Ages is the longest Doom campaign we've ever seen, clocking in at 22 total missions, and who doesn't want more Doom gameplay, right? I get it, and I might be alone here, but it felt, at least to me, that overall, this campaign could have gone with maybe 4 or 5 less missions and still been just as effective. In particular, somewhere in the middle teen areas for missions, after being hit with platforming intensive after platforming intensive area, I started to wonder why this was needed in the context of the campaign. In other words, in my humble opinion, there was a bit of bloat here as id chased after some sort of longer runtime metric. But there you go. There's my honest thoughts and impressions about Doom, The Dark Ages. And as always, I'm looking forward to your feedback. I'd also like to stress this point that I'm just one YouTube guy out here with a mic and a channel. And I definitely encourage you to go check out other reviewers and see what they have to say about Doom, The Dark Ages. But overall, this game was an impressive audio-visual package worthy of recognition. And I'd also like to say I applaud id for not actually standing on their laurels and producing another 2016 or Eternal, instead taking some pretty massive risks while steering the franchise in a completely different direction. Will The Dark Ages be to everyone's taste? Probably not, but it was new, it was fresh, and outside of a few design misses, at least in my humble opinion, overall, the game was awesome. Before we go, I'd like to say thanks to Bethesda for sending over this early review code. This is not a sponsored video, but you know, I was raised right, and I was raised to give thanks. If you liked the video, please take a moment to hit subscribe and ring the notifications bell. Thanks to all our channel members for taking the leap to support me making this style of content. And until the next one, this is LtBuzzLitebeer signing off.